Commander Zixathera stood on the bridge of the stellar wind, her 6 eyes focused on the display screens that showed nothing but empty space. The Velthari commander had served the Galactic Coalition for 30 years, and she had never seen readings like these before. The gravitational sensors were going crazy, showing massive distortions in space that made no sense. "Commander, the anomalies are getting stronger," reported her science officer, a young Chitauri named Kexdal. His insect-like features showed worry as he tapped his control panel with his 4 arms. "Whatever is causing this is huge. Really huge." Zixathera moved closer to the main display. Her ship, the Stellar Wind, was 800 meters long and considered one of the largest vessels in the Coalition fleet. Most alien ships were much smaller, built for speed and efficiency rather than size. The Coalition had learned long ago that bigger ships were harder to maintain and cost too much to build. "Any idea what could cause gravitational distortions this large?" she asked. Kexdal shook his head. "The computer says it would take something the size of a small moon to create readings like this. But there are no moons or planets in this sector." The bridge crew was getting nervous. The Velthari, Chitauri, and other Coalition species had explored space for thousands of years. They had seen many strange things, but nothing like this. The distortions were moving in formation like a fleet of ships, but no ships could be that massive. "Commander," called out the communications officer, a blue-skinned Aquari, "we're getting signals from the distortion field. They're artificial. Someone is trying to communicate with us." Zixathera felt her hearts beating faster. First contact with a new species was always dangerous. The Coalition had rules about how to handle these situations, but the rules were written for normal encounters. Nothing about this felt normal. "Put it on the main screen," she ordered. The display flickered and then showed something that made the entire bridge crew go silent. Space itself seemed to be tearing open, creating tunnels of light and energy. From these tunnels came shapes that grew larger and larger as they approached. "By the ancient gods," whispered Kexdal. "Those are ships, but they were not like any ships the Coalition had ever seen." The first vessel to fully emerge from the tunnel was sleek and white, with strange writing on its hull. The sensors began calculating its size, and the numbers made no sense. 5,000 meters, read Kexdal, his voice shaking. "Commander, that ship is 5,000 meters long." Zixathera stared at the screen. Their own ship was 800 meters, and it was considered large. This alien vessel was more than 6 times bigger. But that was just the beginning. More ships came through the tunnels. Each one was massive, dwarfing anything in Coalition space. The sensors kept climbing. 7,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 12,000 meters. The bridge crew watched in silence as ship after ship emerged, each one bigger than the last. 15,000 meters, Kexdal reported, his voice barely a whisper. "That's impossible," said the weapons officer, a red-scaled Draknari. "No species builds ships that big. The materials alone would cost more than most planets produce in a century." But the sensors did not lie, and still more ships were coming. Then came the largest vessel. It moved slowly through the tunnel, taking several minutes to fully emerge. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the sensors calculated its size. The numbers climbed higher and higher, past anything they thought possible. 32,000 meters, Kexdal finally announced. "Commander, that ship is 32,000 meters long. It's like a flying city." Zixathera had to sit down. In all her years of service, through battles with pirates and first contacts with hostile species, she had never felt fear like this. The alien fleet before them represented power beyond anything the Coalition could imagine. "How many ships are there?" she asked. "Still counting, Commander. At least 50 major vessels plus hundreds of smaller escort ships. But even their escort ships are larger than our biggest battleships." The communication system chimed, indicating an incoming message. The aliens wanted to talk. Zixathera took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing hearts. "Put them through," she ordered. The main screen showed a new image. It was a human face, though the Coalition did not know that yet. The alien looked similar to several Coalition species with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. But there was something in those eyes that made Zixathera uncomfortable. Confidence. These beings were not afraid. "Greetings," said the human in perfect Coalition standard language. "I am Ambassador Sarah Chen of the United Earth Systems. We come in peace and friendship. We detected your monitoring station and wanted to introduce ourselves to your Galactic Coalition." The fact that they already knew about the Coalition was another shock. How long had they been watching? "This is Commander Zix Thera of the Coalition vessel Stellar Wind," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "We welcome you to Coalition space. Your fleet is quite impressive." The human smiled. "Thank you. We apologize if our arrival caused any alarm. We know our ships are somewhat larger than what you might be used to. We can explain everything if you're willing to meet face to face." "Somewhat larger?" Zix Thera almost laughed at the understatement. These ships were not somewhat larger. They were impossibly, ridiculously, frighteningly massive. "We would be honored to meet with you," Zix Thera said. "Perhaps you could send a small delegation to our ship." The human's smile grew wider. "We appreciate the invitation, but we were hoping you might visit us instead. We have more room for proper diplomatic discussions. We can send a shuttle to pick you up." Before Zix Thera could answer, her sensors detected a new contact. A small ship was approaching from the human fleet. But as it got closer, she realized it was not small at all. The shuttle was 300 meters long, almost half the size of the Stellar Wind. "Commander," whispered Kextall, "their shuttle is bigger than most of our warships." Zix Thera realized that everything she thought she knew about space travel and ship design was wrong. These humans had not just built bigger ships. They had built them on a scale that seemed to ignore all the normal rules of physics and economics. As the massive shuttle approached, Zix Thera made her decision. She had to see these ships up close. She had to understand how these humans had achieved something that every coalition engineer said was impossible. "Prepare a diplomatic team," she ordered. "We're going aboard the human ship." "Which one?" asked her first officer. Zix Thera looked at the display, showing dozens of vessels that were each larger than anything in Coalition space. "The big one," she said. As the shuttle docked with the Stellar Wind, Zix Thera realized that first contact with humanity was going to change everything. The Coalition thought they were the advanced civilization in this part of the galaxy, but these humans had just proven that there were levels of advancement the Coalition had never even dreamed of. The age of small ships and careful resource management was over. The humans had arrived, and they had brought their cities with them. Commander Zix Thera felt small as the human shuttle approached the massive ship called Leviathan. Through the shuttle's windows, she could see the human vessel growing larger and larger until it filled their entire view. The shuttle pilot, a friendly human named Lieutenant Torres, seemed completely comfortable navigating around the giant ship. "First time seeing one of our city ships?" Torres asked with a smile. "City ship?" repeated Zix Thera. Her translator was working, but the concept made no sense. "That's what we call them," Torres explained. "The Leviathan houses about 200,000 people. It's like a flying city that can travel between stars." 200,000 people? Zix Thera's entire homeworld had only 50 million inhabitants. The idea of putting 200,000 people on a single ship was beyond her understanding. The shuttle entered a massive opening in the side of the Leviathan. Zix Thera expected to see a normal docking bay, but what she saw instead made her gasp. The hangar was enormous, stretching out farther than she could see. Dozens of shuttles and smaller ships were parked in neat rows, and human workers moved around like tiny ants. "This is Hangar Bay 7, Torres said casually. One of the smaller ones. Zix Thera looked around as they landed. The hangar bay was larger than her entire ship. If this was a small hangar, what did the large ones look like? Dr. Sarah Chen was waiting for them as they left the shuttle. She was tall for a human, with dark hair and kind eyes. Behind her stood several other humans, all wearing simple blue uniforms. "Welcome aboard the Leviathan," Dr. Chen said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "I hope your journey was comfortable. Your ship is impressive," Zix Thera managed to say. Dr. Chen smiled. "Thank you. We know it's probably bigger than what you're used to. Would you like a tour? I think it might help explain why we build on this scale." As they walked through the ship, Zix Thera's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The corridors were wide enough for ground vehicles to drive through. The ceilings were so high that they seemed to disappear into darkness above. Everything was built on a scale that seemed designed for giants, not normal-sized people. "Why are your hallways so big?" asked Kextall, the Chitauri science officer who had come along on the diplomatic mission. "Efficiency," Dr. Chen replied. "We move a lot of people and cargo through these corridors. It's better to build them large from the beginning than to have traffic jams later." They passed through what Dr. Chen called a residential section. Through large windows, Zix Thera could see apartment buildings that looked exactly like the ones on any planet. People were walking on sidewalks. Children were playing in parks, and there were even trees and grass. "You have a forest on your ship," Zixthera said, not quite believing what she was seeing. "Several forests," Dr. Chen corrected, "and lakes, farms, schools, hospitals, factories. Everything a city needs. We don't just travel between stars, Commander. We bring our civilization with us." They stopped at a viewing platform that looked out into a vast open space inside the ship. Zixthera stared in amazement at what looked like a complete city floating in space. Buildings rose up from the floor of the ship, connected by bridges and walkways. People moved around on moving sidewalks and small vehicles. "This is Central Plaza," Dr. Chen explained. "The heart of our city. About 15,000 people live and work in this section alone." "How is this possible?" whispered Kextel. "The structural engineering alone should be impossible. The weight, the power requirements, the life support systems." Dr. Chen led them to an observation deck where they could see the technical specifications displayed on large screens. Kexidal's forearms moved frantically as he tried to take notes on everything he was seeing. "Our fusion reactors produce enough power to supply a small planet," Dr. Chen explained. "We have our own manufacturing facilities, so we can build whatever we need. Our recycling systems are so efficient that we waste almost nothing." "But the cost," Zixthera said. "Building something like this must take the resources of an entire star system." "It does," Dr. Chen agreed. "That's why we only build them for long-term missions. This ship took 5 years to construct and involved the work of millions of people. But once it's built, it can operate independently for decades." They visited the ship's farms where food was grown in massive greenhouse sections. They saw the manufacturing areas, where robots and humans worked together to build everything from clothing to computer systems. They toured the schools where human children learned alongside holographic teachers. "You're not just explorers," Zixthera realized. "You're colonists. But instead of looking for planets to live on, you've built your own planets." "Exactly," Dr. Chen said. "We learned long ago that planets don't always have what we need. They might be too hot or too cold, have the wrong atmosphere, or be too far from resources. So we decided to bring everything we need with us." In the ship's command center, Zixthera met Captain Rodriguez, a gruff older human with gray hair and tired eyes. The command center was as large as the bridge of 10 coalition ships combined, with hundreds of control stations. "Welcome aboard," Captain Rodriguez said. "Sarah's been showing you around, I hear. What do you think of our little ship?" "Little ship?" Zixthera almost laughed. "It's unlike anything we've ever seen. How do you manage to coordinate so many people and systems?" "Practice," Rodriguez said with a smile. "And really good computers. We've been building ships like this for about 50 years now. This one's actually 3rd generation, much more efficient than the early models." "There are more ships like this?" Kextal asked. "Oh yes," Dr. Chen said. "The Leviathan is just one of 50 city ships in our current fleet. Each one is designed for different missions. Some are focused on scientific research, others on colonization, others on manufacturing. 50 ships like this." Zixthera felt dizzy at the thought. The Coalition's entire fleet consisted of maybe 2,000 ships, most of them much smaller than even the humans' escort vessels. "How long have your people been traveling in space?" she asked. "About 200 years since we achieved faster-than-light travel," Dr. Chen replied. "We started small like everyone else, but we learned quickly that small ships mean small thinking. If you want to really explore the galaxy, you need to bring your whole civilization with you." As the tour continued, Zixthera began to understand the human philosophy. They did not see space as an empty void to be crossed as quickly as possible. They saw it as a place to live, to build, to grow. Their ships were not just transportation. They were homes, complete with everything needed for human civilization to thrive. "Your people must be very brave," Zixthera said as they returned to the hangar bay, "to commit so many resources to ships like this." "Or very stubborn," Dr. Chen said with a laugh. "Humans don't like to be told something is impossible. When our engineers said we couldn't build ships this big, we took it as a challenge." As Zixthera prepared to return to her own ship, she realized that everything the Coalition thought they knew about space travel was wrong. They had been thinking small, building small, dreaming small. The humans had shown them that there was another way. The universe was about to get much more interesting. Historian Veltana of the Aquari had spent her life studying the rise and fall of civilizations across the galaxy. She had written books about the great empires, the failed colonies, and the species that had tried to build too much too fast. But as she sat in the grand plaza of the human ship Leviathan, everything she thought she knew about civilization seemed wrong. The grand plaza was a massive open space inside the ship, with a glass dome overhead that showed the stars outside. Trees grew in carefully planned gardens, and a small river flowed through the center of the space. Humans walked along paths, sat on benches, and children played in playgrounds. It looked exactly like the central square of any major city, except this city was flying through space. "It's beautiful," Veltana said to Dr. Chen, who was sitting across from her at a small cafe. "But I don't understand how your people afford to build something like this." Dr. Chen sipped her coffee and smiled. "That's a question we get from every species we meet. Everyone thinks we're crazy for building ships this big. But let me ask you something. How do your people colonize new worlds?" "The standard way," Veltana replied. "We send small, efficient ships with basic supplies. The colonists build what they need using local resources. It takes time, but it works." "And how many colonies fail?" Dr. Chen asked. Veltana paused. It was not a comfortable question. "About half," she admitted. "Sometimes the local resources aren't what we expected. Sometimes the colonists can't adapt to the new environment. Sometimes they just give up." "Exactly," Dr. Chen said. "You're asking people to leave everything they know and start over with almost nothing. That's incredibly difficult. But what if they didn't have to give up anything?" She gestured around the plaza where families were enjoying an afternoon together. "Everyone on this ship lives the same life they would live on Earth. Same food, same entertainment, same comfortable homes. When we reach our destination, we don't have to build a civilization from scratch. We already have one." Veltana began to see the logic, but it still seemed excessive. "But the cost is less than you think," interrupted a new voice. Veltana turned to see a tall human man approaching their table. Dr. Chen introduced him as Captain Rodriguez. "Mind if I join you?" Rodriguez asked, pulling up a chair. "I heard you asking about costs. It's something I think about a lot." He leaned back in his chair and pointed up at the dome above them. "See, most species think about ships as transportation. You build the smallest ship that can get you from point A to point B. But we think about ships as investments." "Investments?" Veltana asked. "This ship took 5 years and enormous resources to build," Rodriguez explained. "But once it's finished, it can operate for 50 years or more. And during those 50 years, it's not just consuming resources, it's producing them." Dr. Chen nodded. "We manufacture everything we need right here on the ship. Our factories produce goods that we trade with other worlds. Our research labs develop new technologies. Our farms produce more food than we can eat. You're making money while you travel," Veltana realized. "Exactly," Rodriguez said. "By the time this ship completes its mission, it will have paid for itself several times over. And will have established a permanent human presence in this part of the galaxy." A group of human children ran past their table, chasing each other and laughing. Veltana watched them and felt a strange sadness. She remembered the Aquari colony ships, cramped and uncomfortable, where children spent years dreaming of the day they could see open sky again. "Your children grow up happy," she observed. "That's the point," Dr. Chen said. "When you're asking people to spend decades traveling between stars, you need to make sure they can live full lives during the journey. Marriage, children, careers, education, entertainment, all of it has to be possible." Rodriguez stood up and walked to the railing that overlooked the plaza. "Come here," he said. "I want to show you something." Veltana joined him at the railing. Below them, the plaza was full of activity. People were shopping, eating, meeting friends, playing sports. It looked like any busy city center. "See that couple over there?" Rodriguez pointed to a young man and woman sitting by the river. "They met on this ship 3 years ago. Got married in the chapel on deck 15. Now they're expecting their first child." He pointed to another area where older humans were playing a game with small balls. "Those people are retired. They spent their careers working in various parts of the ship. Now they spend their time teaching young people, creating art, or just enjoying life. And those kids," he pointed to a playground where dozens of children were playing together. "They were born on this ship. To them, this isn't a spaceship. This is home. This is the world they know." Veltana felt tears in her eyes. In all her studies of galactic civilizations, she had never seen anything like this. Most space travel was about endurance, about surviving the journey to reach a destination. But the humans had created something different. They had created a way to live while traveling. "How did your people develop this philosophy?" she asked. Dr. Chen rejoined them at the railing. Trial and error, mostly. Our early colony ships were small like everyone else's, and like everyone else, we had a lot of failures. People would spend years traveling to a new world only to find it wasn't suitable, or they'd arrive and not have the resources they needed to build a proper colony. So we started thinking bigger, Rodriguez added. Instead of sending people to worlds we hoped would work, we decided to bring the world with us. If a planet isn't suitable, we just keep traveling until we find one that is, and in the meantime we're still living full lives. A gentle chime sounded throughout the plaza, and Veltana saw people beginning to gather in small groups. "What's happening?" she asked. "Evening community meetings," Dr. Chen explained. "Different neighborhoods get together to discuss local issues, plan events, share news. It's part of how we maintain social connections in a community this large." Veltana watched as humans of all ages formed circles and began talking animatedly. She could see friendship, disagreement, laughter, and serious discussion. It was exactly what happened in any healthy community. "You haven't just built a big ship," she said, finally understanding. "You've built a society that can exist anywhere." "Now you're getting it," Rodriguez said with a smile. "That's why size matters. You can't have a real society with 100 people crammed into a small ship. You need thousands of people, space to live and work and play, and resources to support it all." As they walked back through the ship toward the diplomatic quarters, Veltana saw everything differently. The wide corridors weren't wasteful. They were necessary for a community this size. The parks and recreational areas weren't luxuries. They were essential for mental health during long journeys. The factories and schools weren't extras. They were what made the ship a complete civilization rather than just transportation. "Other species are going to want to learn from you," she told Dr. Chen as they reached her guest quarters. "We hope so," Dr. Chen replied. "We'd love to share what we've learned, but it requires a different way of thinking about space travel and colonization." "What do you mean?" Dr. Chen paused at the door to Veltana's room. "Most species see space as empty void between the places they want to go. We see space as where we live. This ship isn't taking us to our destination. This ship is our destination." That night, as Veltana lay in her comfortable bed in quarters larger than most Coalition ship cabins, she thought about everything she had seen. The humans had not just solved the technical problems of building massive ships. They had solved the social and psychological problems of long-term space travel. They had proven that it was possible to bring an entire civilization to the stars. And once other species realized what was possible, nothing would ever be the same again. Security Chief Gralvax of the Coalition fleet paced nervously in his quarters aboard the Stellar Wind. The massive human ships had been sitting peacefully in space for 3 days now, but he could not shake the feeling of danger. His red scales, which normally lay flat against his skin, were raised in an unconscious display of alarm. The Draknari had evolved from predators, and every instinct in Gralvax's body was telling him that the human fleet represented a threat unlike anything the Coalition had ever faced. He had fought pirates, hostile aliens, and rogue AI systems, but those enemies had been normal-sized, using weapons and tactics he understood. "These humans were different, sir." His aide, a young Chitauri officer, entered the room with a datapad. "You requested the tactical analysis of the human vessels." Gralvax took the pad and read through the report. The numbers made his blood run cold. The human escort ships, which they called destroyers, were larger than Coalition battleships. Their main vessels, the city ships, were so massive that they barely registered on scales designed for normal spacecraft. "Have you calculated their possible weapons capacity?" he asked. "We tried, sir," the aide replied nervously. "Based on their size and power output, they could mount weapon systems larger than our entire fleet combined. But our sensors don't detect any obvious weapon signatures." That was what worried Gralvax the most. The humans claimed to be peaceful, but ships this large could hide enormous weapon systems, and if they were lying about their intentions, the Coalition would have no way to defend itself. He made a decision. "Request a meeting with the human leadership. I want to see their defensive capabilities for myself." 2 hours later, Gralvax found himself in a conference room aboard the Leviathan that was larger than his ship's entire command deck. Across from him sat Dr. Sarah Chen and Captain Rodriguez, along with several other human officers. They all looked calm and friendly, which somehow made him more nervous. "Security Chief Gralvax," Dr. Chen said with a smile. "Thank you for joining us. Captain Rodriguez tells me you have some questions about our ship's defensive systems." "I do." Gralvac said, trying to keep his voice steady. Your vessels are unprecedented in size. The Coalition Security Council is concerned about the possible military applications. Captain Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. I understand your concerns. In your position, I'd probably be worried too. Would it help if we showed you our defensive systems? You would do that? Gralvac asked, surprised. Of course, Dr. Chen said. We have nothing to hide. Captain Rodriguez, could you arrange a demonstration? 20 minutes later, Gralvac stood on an observation deck watching the Leviathan's defensive systems activate. What he saw made him forget how to breathe. Panels along the ship's hull slid open, revealing thousands of point defense weapons. Each weapon was larger than the main guns on Coalition warships. Energy shields flickered to life around the massive vessel, creating a barrier that glowed softly in the darkness of space. Our point defense grid can target and destroy incoming missiles, fighters, or debris, Captain Rodriguez explained casually. We need that capability because when you're this big, you're an easy target for smaller, faster attackers. How many weapon systems do you have? Gralvac asked, his voice barely a whisper. About 10,000 point defense turrets on this ship alone, Rodriguez replied, plus the main shield generators, electronic warfare systems, and armor plating. 10,000 weapons. Gralvac's entire battle group had maybe 50 weapon systems total. The humans had more firepower on one ship than the Coalition had in its entire fleet. And this is a civilian vessel? He managed to ask. Dr. Chen and Captain Rodriguez exchanged glances. Yes, Dr. Chen said slowly. This is an exploration and colonization ship. We're not military personnel. Then what do your military ships look like? The silence that followed was more terrifying than any weapon. Finally, Captain Rodriguez spoke. Our military operates on a different scale entirely, he said quietly. The ships you see here are civilian vessels. We build them for exploration, colonization, and trade. Our military ships are larger. Larger? Gralvac felt his legs go weak. How could anything be larger than these massive city ships? Dr. Chen seemed to notice his distress. Security Chief, I want to be very clear about something. Humanity has no hostile intentions toward the Coalition or any other species. We came here to establish friendly relations and trade partnerships. But you could destroy our entire civilization if you wanted to, Gralvac said. Probably, Captain Rodriguez admitted. But we don't want to. Conquest isn't profitable, and we're a very practical people. It's much better to have you as friends and trading partners than as enemies or subjects. Dr. Chen stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Let me tell you something about humanity, Security Chief. We've been building things our entire history. Cities, nations, civilizations. We've learned that it's always better to build together than to tear each other down. But surely your people understand that other species might feel threatened by your ships, Gralvac said. Of course we do, Rodriguez replied. That's why we're being so open with you. We want you to understand that these ships aren't weapons pointed at your worlds. They're homes where our people live and work. To demonstrate this point, they took Gralvac on another tour of the ship. But this time, instead of showing him the impressive engineering and comfortable living spaces, they showed him the more mundane reality of life aboard a city ship. They visited the daycare centers where human children played while their parents worked. They saw the hospitals where doctors treated everything from broken bones to space sickness. They watched teenagers attending classes, learning mathematics and literature and art. You see, Dr. Chen explained as they watched a group of elderly humans playing cards in a recreation room. This isn't a warship pretending to be a city. It's a city that happens to be able to defend itself. In the manufacturing sectors, Gralvac saw the true purpose of the ship's enormous size. Vast factories produced everything the human community needed. Food, clothing, electronics, furniture, even artwork and entertainment. The ship was completely self-sufficient. We build big because we need big, Captain Rodriguez said as they watched robots assembling computer systems. When you're supporting 200,000 people, you need industrial capacity to match. And if another species attacked you? Gralvac asked. We'd defend ourselves, Rodriguez said simply. But we'd much rather avoid that situation entirely. That's why we're talking to you instead of just claiming territory and setting up colonies. As the tour continued, Gralvac began to understand the human perspective. They had not built these massive ships to intimidate or conquer. They had built them because their approach to colonization required enormous resources and infrastructure. But the effect was the same. Whether they intended it or not, the humans had created a fleet that could dominate any other species in the galaxy. The question was what they would do with that power. "What happens now?" he asked as they returned to the conference room. Dr. Chen smiled. "Now we talk. We establish trade relationships, exchange technology, and learn from each other. We share what we've learned about large-scale space habitation, and you teach us about your worlds and cultures. And if the Coalition decides you're too dangerous to have as neighbors?" The room fell silent again. Finally, Captain Rodriguez spoke. "That would be unfortunate," he said quietly, "but it would also be a mistake. We didn't come here to fight, Security Chief. We came here to build something better." As Gralvax returned to his own ship, his mind was spinning with implications. The humans were telling the truth about their peaceful intentions. But they had also demonstrated power that could reshape the entire galaxy. The Coalition faced a choice. They could treat the humans as enemies and try to contain or destroy them. But that would almost certainly lead to their own destruction. Or they could accept the humans as allies and try to learn from them. Looking back at the massive human ships floating peacefully in space, Gralvax realized that the galaxy had just entered a new age. The age of giants had begun, and everyone else would have to adapt or be left behind. The emergency alarm on the Coalition monitoring station screamed through the silence of space. Commander Zixthera rushed to the main display where a terrifying sight was unfolding. A massive asteroid storm, bigger than anything in recorded history, was heading directly toward the Coalition colony world of Cathera Prime. "How long until impact?" she demanded. 18 hours, replied her science officer, Kextel. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. "Commander, there are over 3,000 asteroids in the storm. Some of them are the size of city blocks. The impact will destroy the entire colony." Zixthera felt her heart sinking. Cathera Prime was home to 12 million Coalition citizens. The planetary defense systems could handle small meteor showers, but nothing like this. Evacuating 12 million people in 18 hours was impossible. "Send a priority distress signal to all Coalition fleets," she ordered. "Request immediate assistance." "Already done," reported the communications officer. "The nearest Coalition fleet is 4 days away. Even our fastest ships won't arrive in time." The bridge fell silent except for the steady beeping of the sensors tracking the approaching asteroids. 12 million people were about to die, and there was nothing the Coalition could do to save them. "Commander," the communications officer called out suddenly, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Dr. Sarah Chen's face appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Zixthera could see the bustling activity of the Leviathan's command center. "Commander Zixthera," Dr. Chen said without preamble, "we've detected the asteroid storm heading for your colony world. We can help." "Dr. Chen," Zixthera replied, hope flickering in her voice, "your assistance would be greatly appreciated. But I must warn you, this is an extremely dangerous situation. We're talking about thousands of large asteroids moving at incredible speed." "We understand," Captain Rodriguez said, appearing next to Dr. Chen on the screen. "We're already moving our ships into position. Estimated time to intercept, 14 hours. "Intercept?" Zixthera asked. "Captain, I don't think you understand the size of this storm. It would take hundreds of ships to deflect or destroy that many asteroids." Captain Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Commander, I think you don't understand the size of our ships." Over the next several hours, Zixthera watched in amazement as the human fleet moved with coordinated precision. The massive city ships, which had seemed slow and cumbersome, accelerated to speeds that defied their enormous size. Their escort vessels spread out in formation, each one positioning itself along the path of the asteroid storm. "How are they moving so fast?" Kexadal asked, staring at his instruments. "Ships that size should take hours to change course. Their engines are proportional to their size," Dr. Chen explained over the communication link. "When you build everything on a massive scale, you get massive performance." As the human fleet approached the asteroid storm, Zixthera saw something that she would remember for the rest of her life. The Leviathan and its sister ships positioned themselves directly in the path of the largest asteroids, using their enormous bulk as shields. "What are they doing?" whispered the weapons officer. "Those asteroids will tear their ships apart." But as the first wave of asteroids struck the human vessels, nothing happened. The massive rocks, some as large as buildings, simply bounced off the ship's hulls like pebbles hitting a mountain. Energy shields flared as they absorbed the impacts. But the ships themselves remained undamaged. Our hulls are designed for long-term deep space travel, Captain Rodriguez explained calmly, as asteroids continued to strike his ship. We've run into plenty of debris fields over the years. A little rock storm doesn't worry us much. Meanwhile, the human escort ships were dealing with the smaller asteroids in a display of firepower that left the Coalition observers speechless. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously, turning dangerous space rocks into harmless dust. The precision was incredible. Every shot hit its target, and within minutes, hundreds of asteroids had been completely destroyed. How many ships do you have out there? Sixthera asked, trying to count the weapon signatures on her sensors. All of them, Dr. Chen replied. 52 major vessels plus about 300 smaller ships. This seemed like a good time for a fleet exercise. For the Coalition, this would have been the naval battle of the century, requiring every available ship and thousands of personnel. For the humans, it was a training exercise. As the asteroid storm continued, Sixthera watched human mining ships, vessels she had not even known were present, move into action. These ships were designed for breaking apart asteroids to extract valuable minerals, and they went to work with casual efficiency. Those mining vessels, she said to Dr. Chen, they're larger than our battleships. Industrial ships tend to be big, Dr. Chen agreed. When you're mining an asteroid field, you need the capacity to process a lot of material quickly. The mining ships extended massive mechanical arms that grabbed asteroids and fed them into processing chambers. Within minutes, dangerous space rocks became useful raw materials that were stored in the ship's cargo holds. You're not just stopping the asteroid storm, Kextel observed with wonder. You're harvesting it, Captain Rodriguez chuckled. No sense in wasting good resources. Those asteroids contain enough rare metals to supply several star systems. By the time the last asteroid was either destroyed or captured, the human fleet had turned a natural disaster into a profitable mining operation. The colony world of Cathara Prime was safe, and the humans had acquired enough raw materials to build several new ships. Commander, Dr. Chen said as the all-clear signal was broadcast to the colony world, we're transmitting the processed materials to your people as a gift. Consider it a gesture of friendship between our civilizations. Zix. Thara stared at the sensor readings showing cargo ships full of refined metals heading toward Cathara Prime. The materials were worth more than the entire colony's annual economic output. Dr. Chen, she said, her voice thick with emotion, you have saved 12 million lives today. The Coalition will not forget this. We hope not, Dr. Chen replied with a smile, because we'd like to propose a joint project. The joint project, as it turned out, was something that would change the Coalition forever. The humans offered to share their shipbuilding technology and help the Coalition construct their own city ships. We can't just give you the plans, Captain Rodriguez explained during a meeting aboard the Leviathan 2 days later. Ships this size require a completely different approach to engineering, resource management, and social organization. But we can teach you. Teach us? Asked Coalition Fleet Admiral Kicksnor, who had arrived to personally thank the humans for their assistance. A joint construction project, Dr. Chen said. We'll work together to build the first Coalition city ship. Your people will learn our techniques and will learn about your needs and preferences. Admiral Kicksnor looked skeptical. Such a project would take years and cost enormous resources. About 5 years, Rodriguez agreed. And yes, it will be expensive, but less expensive than you might think, especially if we pool our resources. Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing ship designs. We've been analyzing Coalition technology and social structures. Your people prefer smaller, more intimate communities than humans do, so instead of one massive city ship, we could build a ship designed for your cultural needs. The hologram showed a vessel that was large by Coalition standards, but smaller than the human city ships. It was designed with multiple separate sections connected by transit tubes, allowing for the smaller community groups that Coalition species preferred. It would house about 50,000 people, Dr. Chen explained, large enough to be self-sufficient, but organized in a way that feels familiar to your people. Over the following months, the joint construction project became the most ambitious engineering undertaking in Coalition history. Human engineers worked alongside Coalition scientists, sharing knowledge and solving problems together. Sixthera, who had been promoted to oversee the project, found herself spending most of her time aboard the Leviathan, learning human construction techniques. She watched as enormous manufacturing systems built components that were then assembled in space, by teams of human and coalition workers. Your people learn quickly, Captain Rodriguez commented as they watched Chitauri engineers operating human construction equipment. We've had good teachers, Zixthara replied, though I admit thinking on this scale is still difficult for us. You'll get used to it, Rodriguez assured her. Once you see what's possible, you can't go back to thinking small. The construction project took exactly 5 years, just as the humans had predicted. When the Coalition's first city ship, named Unity in honor of the cooperation between species, was finally completed, it represented more than just advanced technology. It represented a new way of thinking about space exploration and colonization. At the dedication ceremony, held in Unity's main plaza, representatives from dozens of Coalition worlds gathered to celebrate. The ship buzzed with activity as Coalition families moved into their new homes among the stars. The black ships came from the darkness between stars like giant metal sharks swimming through an ocean of nothing. Each vessel stretched longer than the tallest buildings on Earth, their hulls smooth and deadly. They moved in perfect formation, dozens of them creating shadows against the distant sun. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Celestial Dominion. His forearms were folded behind his back as he watched the small blue planet grow larger on the viewing screen. Earth looked so peaceful from space, so helpless. He had done this same thing 47 times before with other worlds. It always ended the same way. Sir, we are receiving signals from the planet, his communications officer reported. They want to talk. Kethvar's mandibles clicked together in what his species considered laughter. Of course they do. They have seen our ships. They know they cannot fight us. The human planet had been sending out radio signals for over a century. His scouts had been listening to their communications, learning their languages, studying their primitive technology. Humans still used chemical rockets to barely escape their own atmosphere. They fought wars with metal bullets and explosive devices. They were children playing with sticks while the Zephyrian Empire wielded the power of stars. Tell them we will receive one of their diplomatic vessels, Kethvar ordered. Make sure they understand the honor we are giving them. Within hours, a small human ship approached the Zephyrian fleet. Kethvar watched it come closer and felt disappointed. The vessel was tiny, maybe 200 meters long. Its hull was painted white with blue markings. It looked more like a cargo transport than a proper ship. Where were the weapons? Where were the shields? How did these creatures expect to survive in space with such pathetic technology? The human ship docked with the Celestial Dominion. Kethvar made his way to the main airlock, followed by his honor guard. 6 Zephyrian warriors in full battle armor, each carrying plasma rifles that could melt through steel. The humans would see this display of power and understand their situation immediately. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. 3 humans stepped through, wearing simple blue uniforms with no visible weapons. The leader was a woman with short brown hair and calm eyes. She looked around the docking bay with what appeared to be genuine amazement. Welcome aboard the Celestial Dominion, Kethvar said in careful English. I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. The human woman stepped forward and offered her hand in their strange greeting ritual. Captain Sarah Chen of the Earthship, Olive Branch. Thank you for meeting with us, Admiral. Kethvar studied her face as they shook hands. She seemed nervous but not terrified. That was interesting. Most species were barely able to speak when they first saw Zephyrian warriors. Come, he said. Let me show you the power of the Empire. He led the human delegation through the corridors of his ship. Captain Chen and her companions looked at everything with wide eyes. They stopped to examine the energy conduits that glowed in the walls. They stared at the holographic displays that showed star maps of conquered worlds. When they passed through the weapons control center, Chen actually gasped. These energy readings, she said softly. Are these your main guns? Our smallest weapons, Kethvar replied with pride. Each of these cannons could destroy your largest cities in seconds. Chen nodded slowly. Incredible. We have nothing like this, perfect. She was already understanding the reality of her situation. In the main conference room, Kethvar activated the holographic display. Images of Zephyrian worlds appeared in the air above the table. Cities that floated in the sky, space stations that orbited dying stars, fleets of warships that numbered in the thousands. The Zephyrian Empire spans 412 worlds, he began. We have brought peace and order to countless species across this galaxy. We offer the same gift to humanity. Captain Chen leaned forward in her chair. What kind of gift? Protection, Kethavar explained. Your world will become part of our empire. You will have our technology, our knowledge, our security. In return, you will provide resources and workers to help our civilization grow. And if we refuse? Kethavar's mandibles clicked again. Look around you, Captain. Do you see an option for refusal? Chen was quiet for a long moment. She looked at her two companions, then back at the holographic display. I need to discuss this with my government. This is a decision that affects all of humanity. Of course, you have 72 of your hours to decide. But Captain Chen, let me be clear about something. Kethavar stood up, his forearms spread wide. In 5 centuries of expansion, no species has ever chosen to fight us after seeing our fleet. The wise choice is obvious. Captain Chen and her team were given quarters on the ship while they waited. Kethavar watched through security cameras as they explored their rooms and talked quietly among themselves. They seemed to be taking measurements of things and asking questions about how various systems worked. Curious behavior, but harmless. Primitive species often wanted to understand technology that was beyond their comprehension. The next day, Chen requested a tour of the fleet. Kethavar was happy to show off his ships. They visited the Void Piercer, a destroyer that could move faster than light. They toured the Starbreaker, a dreadnought whose main cannon could crack planets. Chen and her people asked many technical questions. How did the engines work? How much energy did the weapons consume? How were the ships built? Your technology is amazing, Chen said as they stood on the observation deck of the Starbreaker. How long did it take your people to develop ships like this? Many thousands of years, Kethavar replied. But we are generous with our knowledge. Species that join our empire willingly receive access to our science much faster. Chen nodded and made notes on a small device. I think I understand. On the final day, Captain Chen returned to the Celestial Dominion for Earth's answer. She looked tired but determined as she entered the conference room. Kethavar had assembled his senior officers for this moment. They all expected the same outcome as always. Admiral, Chen began, I have spoken with the leaders of Earth. We are honored by your offer to join your empire. Kethavar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Another world added to their collection without firing a shot. However, Chen continued, we must respectfully decline. The conference room went silent. Kethavar felt his 4 hearts skip beats. In 500 years of conquest, no species had ever said those words after seeing the fleet. I am sorry, Captain, he said slowly. I do not think I understood you correctly. Earth chooses to remain independent, Chen said clearly. We thank you for your generous offer, but we prefer to govern ourselves. Kethavar looked around at his officers. They were all staring at the human woman as if she had spoken in an alien language, which in a way she had. The language of species that chose destruction over submission. Captain Chen, Kethavar said carefully, perhaps you need more time to consider this decision. Perhaps you need to see a demonstration of what refusing our protection means. Chen stood up from her chair. That won't be necessary, Admiral. We understand the situation perfectly. She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. But Admiral, if you insist on a demonstration, we'd be happy to show you one of our own. The words sent a chill through Kethavar's spine. What could these primitives possibly demonstrate that would matter against the might of the Zephyrian Empire? But something in Captain Chen's calm smile made him hesitate. Something in her eyes suggested that Earth might not be as helpless as it appeared. Admiral Kethavar could not sleep that night. Captain Chen's words kept echoing in his mind. No species had ever offered to demonstrate anything to the Zephyrian Empire. Most begged for mercy. Others tried to hide. A few attempted desperate attacks that ended quickly, but none had ever smiled and offered demonstrations. He stood in his private chamber looking out at the stars. The human ship Olive Branch floated near his fleet, small and fragile among the massive Zephyrian warships. It looked like a child's toy next to real weapons of war. Yet something about Captain Chen's confidence bothered him. Sir, came a voice from his door communicator. The human vessel is requesting permission to return to their planet. Granted, Kethavar replied. Track their movement. I want to know exactly where they go. The Olive Branch departed the next morning. Kethavar watched it disappear toward the inner solar system, becoming just another point of light among millions. His scout ships followed at a distance, recording everything. Hours passed. Then a day. The human governments remained silent. No messages of surrender. No pleas for more time. Nothing. Kethvar called a meeting of his senior officers in the main war room. The holographic display showed Earth's solar system in detail. Their scouts had mapped everything over the past few months. 1 star, 8 planets, countless asteroids and small moons, and 1 inhabited world full of primitive creatures who had somehow forgotten their place in the universe. "Fleet Admiral," said Commander Vextar, "the humans have had sufficient time to reconsider. Perhaps they need encouragement." Kethvar nodded slowly. "I agree. Prepare the fleet for a demonstration, something they cannot ignore." Within an hour, the Zephyrian battle formation was complete. 43 ships arranged in perfect attack pattern. Destroyers on the flanks, their hulls gleaming with deadly energy. Cruisers in the middle ranks, weapons charged and ready. And at the center, the massive dreadnoughts that could end civilizations. "All ships report ready." "Sir," his tactical officer announced. "Begin the demonstration," Kethvar ordered. The first part of the display was movement. The fleet performed a complex dance through space, ships moving in perfect coordination. They accelerated to speeds that would crush any human vessel. They turned in formations that demonstrated complete control over physics that humans barely understood. Each maneuver was calculated to show the hopelessness of resistance. "Target the asteroid cluster at coordinates 779, Kethvar commanded. The fleet's weapon systems came online with a sound like thunder trapped in metal. Energy readings spiked across all sensors. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. Even Kethvar, who had seen this display dozens of times, felt impressed by the raw destruction his fleet could unleash. Fire. Lance beams of pure energy reached across space in perfect straight lines. They struck the asteroid cluster and turned rock into expanding clouds of superheated gas. In seconds, chunks of stone that had existed for billions of years simply ceased to exist. The energy released was equivalent to 1,000 nuclear weapons detonating simultaneously, but they were not finished. "Target the ice moon at coordinates 442. This target was larger, a small moon covered in frozen water, about the size of a human city. The dreadnought Starbreaker moved forward, its main cannon charging with enough energy to power a planet. The beam that emerged was not like the smaller weapons. This was a column of destruction that tore through space itself. When it struck the ice moon, the entire celestial body simply vanished, not destroyed, not broken apart, completely removed from existence as if it had never been there at all. "Readings confirmed total destruction," reported the weapons officer. "No debris larger than dust particles." Kethvar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "Open a channel to Earth." The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of a human space station. Several humans in military uniforms looked back at him. Their faces were pale but determined. "People of Earth," Kethvar began, "you have witnessed a small demonstration of our capabilities. The asteroids and moon we destroyed could have been your cities, your military installations, your entire world. We offer you one final opportunity to accept our protection." A human admiral stepped forward. "Admiral Kethvar, I am Admiral Rodriguez of Earth Defense Command. We received your message clearly. And your response? Earth's position remains unchanged. We choose independence." Kethvar felt his mandibles grinding together in frustration. Were these creatures insane? Had they not seen the moon disappear? "Admiral Rodriguez, perhaps you did not understand what you witnessed. We destroyed celestial bodies. Your weapons cannot even scratch our shields." "We understand perfectly," Rodriguez replied calmly, "and we appreciate the demonstration. As Captain Chen mentioned, we'd be happy to provide one of our own." "You keep saying that," Kethvar snapped. "What could you possibly show us that would be relevant to this discussion?" Admiral Rodriguez smiled the same way Captain Chen had, that calm, confident expression that made no sense. "Why don't you watch and find out?" The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers exchanged confused glances. What demonstration could these primitives possibly offer? "Sir," called his sensor operator, "I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the inner system." "What kind of readings?" "Unknown, sir. The patterns don't match anything in our databases." Kethvar frowned. "Show me." The main display switched to a detailed scan of Earth's solar system. At first, everything looked normal. The sun burned at the center. Planets orbited in their predictable paths. Asteroids drifted in their belt between the 4th and 5th worlds. Then things began to change. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy spikes from multiple locations. the sensor operator reported. "The readings they're enormous, sir." "How enormous?" "Larger than our dreadnought reactors." "Much larger." That was impossible. Human technology was centuries behind Zephyrian science. They still use primitive chemical reactions for power. Their most advanced weapons were barely stronger than rocks thrown by hand. "Are you certain about these readings?" "Yes, sir." "And they're growing stronger." Cathvar stared at the display. Numbers scrolled past showing energy outputs that shouldn't exist in this system. Power levels that suggested technology far beyond what humans should possess. "Sir," another officer called out, "I'm detecting movement in the asteroid belt." "Large-scale movement. Show me." The display zoomed in on the asteroid belt. Cathvar watched in growing confusion as chunks of rock began moving with purpose. Not drifting, moving, accelerating in directions that defied orbital mechanics. "Are those asteroids under power?" "They appear to be, sir. I'm reading engine signatures from over 200 objects. 200 asteroids with engines." That was strange but not threatening. Even if humans had somehow built ships disguised as rocks, they would still be primitive vessels. Then the disguises began falling away. What Cathvar had taken for asteroids revealed themselves as something else entirely. Metal structures unfolded from rocky shells. Weapon ports opened like mechanical flowers. Energy signatures blazed to life across the asteroid belt. "Sir," his tactical officer said in a voice barely above a whisper, "those aren't asteroids. They're space stations. Military installations. They've been hidden." Cathvar felt his four hearts beginning to beat faster. Hidden installations were concerning, but still manageable. His fleet had faced defensive stations before. Then Earth's moon began to change. The gray surface cracked along geometric lines. Sections of rock slid away to reveal gleaming metal underneath. Massive weapon batteries emerged from hidden bays. Energy readings from the moon suddenly spiked to levels that made Cathvar's instruments scream warnings. "Status report," he demanded. "Sir, we're reading energy signatures from Luna that exceed our main fleet reactor output by a factor of 12. 12 times the power of his entire fleet. From one moon. That was not possible with human technology. But they were not finished. Mars, the red planet, was changing too. Its dusty surface was shifting, revealing structures underneath. A planetary shipyard became visible, with vessels under construction that dwarfed Zephyrian dreadnoughts. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." "Put it through." Captain Chen appeared on the screen. But she was no longer wearing a simple diplomatic uniform. Now she wore the dark blue of a military commander with insignia that marked her as a fleet admiral. "Admiral Cathvar," she said pleasantly, "thank you for your demonstration. As promised, here is ours." Behind her, Cathvar could see the bridge of what was obviously a warship, not the civilian transport she had arrived in. A military vessel with technology that looked disturbingly advanced. "Observe," Chen said simply. The space around Earth suddenly filled with light. The lights that filled space around Earth were not explosions or energy weapons. They were activation signals. Across the entire solar system, things that had been hidden were revealing themselves. Admiral Cathvar watched in growing shock as his tactical display updated with new contacts. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. What his scouts had mapped as empty space, asteroids, and dead moons were coming alive with energy signatures that made his fleet look like toys. "Sir," his sensor operator called out, voice shaking, "I'm reading massive structural changes throughout the system. The planet Jupiter's moons they're moving into formation." On the main screen, Cathvar watched 4 points of light arrange themselves around the gas giant. But these were not natural moons anymore. They were revealing geometric shapes, metallic surfaces, weapon arrays that stretched across hundreds of kilometers. Energy readings from the Jupiter system now exceed our entire fleet capacity by a factor of 50, his tactical officer reported. 50 times. Cathvar felt his breathing become difficult. How is this possible? Human technology was primitive. Their most powerful weapons were barely stronger than chemical explosives. "Sir, detecting massive movement from Earth itself." Cathvar turned his attention back to the blue planet. At first it looked unchanged. The same white clouds, the same brown and green continents, the same blue oceans he had observed for months. Then the continents began to separate. "What am I looking at?" Cathvar demanded. "Sir, the planet's surface appears to be opening, like massive doors or hatches." I'm reading artificial structures beneath the continental plates. Kethvar watched in disbelief as Earth's Pacific Ocean drained away, revealing a metal surface underneath. The ocean had been covering something enormous. As water flowed away into hidden channels, weapon ports became visible. Each one was larger than his entire flagship. "Sir," his science officer called out, "preliminary analysis suggests the entire planet has been modified, extensively modified. The continents appear to be movable sections covering a planetary-scale installation." A planetary-scale installation. Kethvar had heard rumors of such things. Ancient weapons left behind by dead civilizations. Planet killers built by species that had transcended physical existence. But he had never seen one. No one in the Empire had. "How long would it take to build something like that?" he asked quietly. "Sir, with our most advanced technology, converting an entire planet would take thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands." But humans had only been spacefaring for decades. Their radio signals indicated they had barely developed electricity 2 centuries ago. How could they have built something that would challenge the Empire's greatest engineering projects? The answer came from Captain Chen's voice across the communication channel. "You're wondering how this is possible," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "Humanity has been preparing for this conversation for over 200 years. We've been watching, learning, and building." "Impossible," Kethvar said. "Your species has barely left your planet," Chen smiled. "Admiral, you've been listening to our radio signals for months. Did you think we weren't listening to yours?" The words hit Kethvar like a physical blow. The Empire's communication networks. Their scout ships had been transmitting data back to command for months, using standard encryption protocols. Protocols that were absolutely secure against any known technology. "We've known about your Empire since your first scout probe entered our system 18 months ago," Chen continued. "We've been monitoring your communications, studying your technology, learning your tactics. Every species you've conquered made the same mistake. They tried to match you ship for ship, weapon for weapon. On the tactical display, more structures were coming online. The asteroid belt had completely reorganized itself into a defensive grid. Each installation was broadcasting energy signatures that equaled or exceeded Zephyrian capital ships. We took a different approach," Chen said. "We asked ourselves, what if the entire solar system was the weapon?" Kethvar looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their instruments in disbelief. The readings they were seeing violated everything they knew about human capabilities. "Status of our weapon systems," he ordered. "All systems functional, sir. But, sir, target acquisition is having difficulty. There are too many contacts. Our computers can't process them all. Too many contacts." His fleet was designed to fight other fleets. Organized formations of ships that moved predictably through space. They were not prepared for an enemy that had turned an entire star system into a fortress. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "the humans are hailing us again." "Put them through." This time it was not Captain Chen. A new human appeared on the screen, an older man with gray hair and calm eyes that reminded Kethvar uncomfortably of seasoned Zephyrian commanders. "Admiral Kethvar, I am General Harrison, Strategic Defense Command. I think we need to have a more honest conversation." "You have hidden your true capabilities," Kethvar said. "This is deception." "Yes, it is," Harrison agreed calmly. "Just as you deceived us by pretending this was a diplomatic mission instead of a conquest fleet." Kethvar had no answer for that. Empire protocol was clear. Overwhelming force followed by generous surrender terms. It had worked for 5 centuries. "General Harrison, you cannot seriously believe you can fight the entire Zephyrian Empire. This is one system. We control hundreds of worlds. Admiral, you control hundreds of worlds because you've never faced serious resistance. Your conquests have been easy because your enemies were unprepared. We've had nearly 2 years to prepare." On the tactical display, new contacts were still appearing. Ships emerging from hidden bays and asteroids, stations powering up in the outer system. Weapon platforms that had been disguised as space debris revealing their true nature. "How many installations do you have?" Kethvar asked. "Enough," Harrison replied simply. "Sir," Kethvar's science officer called out, "I've completed preliminary analysis of their modifications. Admiral, they haven't just built weapons. They've rebuilt the fundamental structure of their solar system. Gravity generators, artificial magnetic fields. They've turned their star system into a controlled environment. That explained how they had moved asteroids into formation. how they had hidden massive installations. They had been reshaping space itself. Your demonstration was impressive, Harrison continued. Destroying asteroids and moons shows considerable firepower. But Admiral, we didn't just modify our system for defense. We built it for projection of force. What do you mean? Instead of answering, Harrison gestured to someone off-screen. Show him. The space around Kethvar's fleet suddenly changed. Not visibly, but every sensor on every ship began screaming warnings. Massive gravitational fluctuations. Energy patterns that shouldn't exist. The fabric of space itself was being manipulated. Sir, we're detecting gravitational anomalies around the fleet, his science officer reported. Something is generating artificial gravity fields. Can we move? Sir, our engines are functional, but the gravitational interference is making navigation difficult. We can move, but not quickly and not precisely. Kethvar realized what the humans had done. They had not just built weapons. They had built a trap. His fleet was caught in artificial gravity fields that limited their movement, while surrounded by defensive installations that could fire freely. This is not possible, he said quietly. Your technology cannot do this. General Harrison's expression was sympathetic but firm. Admiral, you're thinking like a conqueror. You see a primitive species and assume they'll remain primitive. But we're not the same humans who were sending radio signals a century ago. We learn, we adapt, we improve. But this level of advancement, it would take thousands of years. It would take your species thousands of years, Harrison corrected. Humans work differently. When we're faced with an existential threat, we don't just prepare for it. We obsess over it. We dedicate our entire civilization to solving it. Kethvar thought about the intelligence reports on human history. They had fought wars against themselves for millennia. They had survived ice ages, plagues, nuclear weapons, climate disasters. Each time they had not just survived. They had come back stronger. For 200 years, our best minds have worked on one question, Harrison continued. How do we defend ourselves against a galactic empire? Not how do we build better ships? How do we make ourselves unconquerable? The tactical display showed the full scope of what humans had built. The entire solar system had been converted into a weapons platform. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid belt had been modified for war. It was not just impressive. It was terrifying. General Harrison, Kethvar said carefully, what happens now? Harrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Now, Admiral, we show you what unconquerable looks like. General Harrison disappeared from the screen, replaced by Admiral Chen. But this was not the diplomatic captain who had visited Kethvar's ship. This was a military commander in full uniform, standing on the bridge of a warship that looked nothing like the simple transport vessel Olive Branch. Admiral Kethvar, Chen said, you wanted a demonstration. Let us show you precision first. On Kethvar's tactical display, a single beam of energy reached across space from Earth's moon. It was not like the massive destruction beams his fleet had used to destroy asteroids. This was something else entirely. Thin, focused, and impossibly precise. The beam touched his flagship's main weapon system and stopped. Not penetrating the hull, not causing an explosion, just touching. Sir, his weapons officer called out in confusion. Our primary plasma cannon is offline. Damage report. No damage, sir. The weapon system has been removed, surgically removed. The beam somehow extracted our main gun without affecting surrounding systems. Kethvar stared at his tactical display. The beam had reached across hundreds of thousands of kilometers and performed delicate surgery on his ship's weapons, with precision that his own engineers couldn't match at point-blank range. How is that possible? He whispered. Admiral Chen heard him somehow. We've had a long time to study your technology, Admiral. Every sensor scan your ships performed, we were scanning you back. We know your weapon systems better than you do. Another beam reached out from a different installation. This one touched the destroyer Void Piercer and somehow disabled its engines without causing any explosion or visible damage. The ship simply stopped, floating helplessly in space. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the Void Piercer reports total engine failure, but there's no damage. Their power systems just turned off. More beams began reaching out from installations throughout the solar system. Each one precisely targeted a specific system on a specific ship. Weapons went offline. Shields deactivated. Communication arrays stopped functioning. None of the ships were destroyed. None of the crews were harmed. But the Zephyrian fleet was being systematically dismantled piece by piece. This is not random destruction, Kethavar realized. You're demonstrating control. Correct, Chen replied. Any species can build weapons that destroy. We built weapons that choose exactly what they affect. We can disable your ships without killing your crews. Or we can do this. The demonstration changed. Now the beams reaching out from human installations were different. Broader, more powerful. They reached not toward Kethavar's fleet, but toward empty space far beyond the solar system. Targeting distant asteroid cluster in the Centauri system, Chen announced. Kethavar felt his breathing stop. The Centauri system was over 4 light-years away. No weapon could reach that far. Energy beams traveled at light speed. It would take years for any attack to reach another star system. But on his long-range sensors, readings appeared immediately. The asteroid cluster in Centauri space simply vanished. Not 4 years from now. Now. Instantly. That's impossible, his science officer stated. Energy cannot travel faster than light. Your energy cannot, Chen corrected. We've learned to fold space. To create corridors through dimensions your physics haven't discovered yet. Distance is no longer relevant to our weapons. Kethavar stared at the sensor readings. Weapons that could strike instantly across interstellar distances. The implications were staggering. No fleet could hide from such weapons. No planet could be considered safe. Target asteroid belt in the Vega system, Chen announced. Another distant target vanished instantly. Then another. And another. Each demonstration showed that human weapons could reach anywhere in the galaxy without delay. Stop, Kethavar said quietly. The demonstrations ceased. Admiral, Chen said, you came here expecting to face a primitive species with primitive weapons. Instead, you found a civilization that has spent 2 centuries preparing for this exact moment. Every resource, every brilliant mind, every technological breakthrough has been focused on one goal, making Earth unconquerable. Kethavar looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their instruments in shock. The readings they were seeing redefined what was possible in warfare. Your empire spans 500 years and 400 worlds, Chen continued. Impressive. Humanity has been preparing for galactic contact for 200 years, and we have turned our single system into a fortress that could hold off your entire civilization. One system cannot defeat an empire, Kethavar protested. Though his voice lacked conviction, can't it? Chen asked. Admiral, your empire works because you can project force across great distances. You can move fleets from system to system, overwhelming local defenses. But what happens when your enemy can strike back instantly across any distance? The question hung in space like a physical weight. Kethavar understood the implications immediately. The Zephyrian Empire was built on mobility and overwhelming local force. But if humans could attack any target instantly from their fortress system, mobility became irrelevant. Consider this, Chen said. Right now our weapons are targeting every major military installation in your empire. Your shipyards, your fleet bases, your command centers. We're not firing, but we could, all of them, simultaneously. Kethavar's 4 hearts were beating so fast he could barely think. You're threatening our entire civilization. No, Admiral. We're demonstrating the reality of your situation. You came here planning to conquer us. Instead, you've discovered that we can conquer you. On the tactical display, new information was appearing. Detailed scans of Zephyrian worlds, military installations, fleet positions, defensive arrays. The humans knew everything about the Empire's military structure. How long have you been watching us? Kethavar asked. Since your first scout probe. We've been monitoring your communications, tracking your fleets, mapping your territory. We know where every ship is located. We know the defensive capabilities of every world. We know your supply lines, your command structure, your strategic weaknesses. Chen's image was replaced by a holographic map of Zephyrian space. Every world was marked. Every fleet position was shown. Every major installation was highlighted. It was more detailed than the Empire's own strategic maps. This is what 200 years of preparation looks like, Chen said. Not just building better weapons, building better intelligence, better strategy, better understanding of our potential enemies. The map zoomed in on individual systems showing defensive positions that the Empire considered secret, hidden bases that only a few high-ranking officers knew about. Emergency supply depots that were classified above Kethavar's security level. How? He whispered. Your communication networks are more vulnerable than you think, Chen replied. Your encryption methods assume that only species with similar technology will try to break them. You never considered that a supposedly primitive species might approach the problem from completely different angles. Kethavar realized that the Empire had been completely infiltrated, not by spies or agents, but by mathematical analysis and electronic surveillance that they had never thought to defend against. "What do you want?" he asked. "Right now? We want you to understand your situation. You came here expecting easy conquest. Instead, you found an enemy that knows everything about you and can strike anywhere you exist. Your fleet is trapped in gravitational fields that we control. Your weapons are disabled. Your ships are helpless, but you haven't destroyed us." "No, we haven't. That's because we're not conquerors, Admiral. We're defenders. We don't want your empire. We just want to be left alone." Chen's image returned to the screen. Her expression was serious but not hostile. "Here's what's going to happen," she said. "Your fleet will be escorted out of our system. You will return to your empire and report what you found here. You will tell them that Earth is not available for conquest. And if my empire decides to send a larger fleet," Chen's smile was cold, "then we'll demonstrate that our weapons work just as well on 1,000 ships as they do on 40. The size of your fleet is irrelevant when we can disable every vessel instantly from any distance." Kethavar looked at his tactical display one more time. His mighty fleet, pride of the Empire, was floating helplessly in space. Weapons disabled, engines offline, communication systems barely functional. They had been defeated without a single shot being fired in anger. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "Yes, it does," Chen agreed. "The galaxy is about to learn that humans don't follow the same rules as other species. We don't just adapt to threats. We eliminate them." 3 days later, Admiral Kethavar sat in his private quarters aboard the Celestial Dominion. His ship was functional again. The humans had restored his weapons, his engines, his communication systems. They had done it as easily as they had disabled them, with those impossible precision beams that could reach across space and modify technology without causing damage. His fleet was moving away from Earth's solar system, escorted by a single human vessel. Not the massive warships they had revealed, but the same small ship that Captain Chen had arrived in. The Olive Branch. Except now, Kethavar knew it was not a civilian transport. It was a warship disguised as something harmless, just like everything else about human space. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Kethavar accepted the call and Admiral Chen appeared on his screen. She was still wearing her military uniform, but her expression was less severe than during the demonstrations. "Admiral Kethavar," she said politely, "I wanted to speak with you privately before you reach the edge of our system." "To gloat about your victory?" Chen shook her head. "To help you understand what you'll be reporting to your empire, and to make sure you understand the choice your people now face." Kethavar leaned back in his chair. "What choice?" "You've made it clear that resistance is futile." "That's not true," Chen said. "You have several options. The question is which one your empire will choose." On the screen behind Chen, a holographic display appeared showing star charts of Zephyrian space. But these charts included new information: human observation posts, monitoring stations, evidence that Earth's surveillance network extended far beyond their single system. "Option 1, Chen began, "is to pretend this encounter never happened. Declare Earth system off limits and continue your expansion in other directions. There's a whole galaxy out there, plenty of worlds to conquer that won't fight back. And if we choose that option, then we'll monitor your empire to ensure you keep the agreement. But otherwise we'll leave you alone. We have no interest in interfering with your civilization, as long as you don't interfere with ours." Kethavar studied the star charts. The monitoring stations were positioned throughout Zephyrian space. Humans could watch everything the Empire did, but they were offering to do nothing about it as long as Earth was left alone. "Option 2, Chen continued, "is to try to develop countermeasures. Spend the next few decades trying to build technology that can match ours. We won't interfere with those efforts either." "Why not?" Chen smiled. "Because we're confident in our technological advantage. You're welcome to try to catch up. By the time you develop weapons that can match what we showed you, we'll have had decades to improve even further." The third chart that appeared showed potential technological development paths, complex equations and research projections that hurt Kethavar's head to look at. But the conclusion was clear. Even with their most optimistic estimates, the Empire would need centuries to match current human capabilities. "Option 3, Chen said, "is war. The star charts changed again, showing fleet movements and battle projections. But these were not simulations of heroic Zephyrian victories. They showed systematic destruction of Imperial forces across dozens of systems. If your empire chooses war, Chen continued, we'll end it quickly. We won't invade your worlds or harm your civilians. But every military installation, every warship, every weapons platform will be destroyed. Your empire will be left defenseless. You would cripple our entire civilization. Only your military capability. Your people can rebuild. They can develop peaceful technology. They can explore the galaxy without conquering it. But they won't be able to threaten other species. Kethvar looked at the projections and felt sick. The human analysis showed complete military victory within months. Not years, months. The empire that had dominated the galaxy for 5 centuries would be reduced to helpless colonies scattered across space. There is a fourth option, Chen said quietly, which is alliance. The word hung between them like an unexpected gift. Kethvar had not expected the humans to offer partnership after demonstrating their overwhelming superiority. What kind of alliance? The kind where your empire stops conquering and starts exploring. Where you use your knowledge of the galaxy to help us make contact with other species peacefully. Where we share technology and work together to advance both our civilizations. Chen's expression became more animated as she described this possibility. Admiral, your people have 5 centuries of experience with different alien cultures. You know languages, customs, technologies that we've never encountered. That knowledge is valuable, and in return, we share our defensive technology, help you protect your existing worlds from other threats, maybe even help you improve life for your citizens instead of just expanding your territory. Kethvar considered this option. It would mean fundamental changes to Zephyrian culture. The empire had been built on conquest and expansion. The idea of peaceful exploration was almost alien to his people. My empire will not accept being dictated to by a single world, he said. We're not dictating, Chen replied. We're offering choices. Your empire can choose any of these paths. But Admiral, understand this clearly. The choice of whether or not to respect Earth's independence is not on the table. That decision has already been made. The communication screen switched to show real-time images of Earth's solar system. But now Kethvar could see the full scope of what humans had built. Thousands of installations, weapons that could reshape space itself. A fortress system that made the Empire's greatest strongholds look primitive. This is what humans accomplished in 2 centuries when we thought our survival was at stake, Chen said. Imagine what we might accomplish in the next 2 centuries if we're working towards something positive, instead of just preparing for war. Kethvar understood the implication. Humans had built all of this while preparing for a threat that hadn't even arrived yet. What would they build when they had actual threats to respond to? What would they become if they focused on exploration and discovery instead of defense? You're offering to become the dominant power in the galaxy, he said. No, Chen corrected. We're offering to help create a galaxy where no one needs to be dominant, where species can coexist without constant fear of conquest, where technology is used for exploration and improvement instead of just warfare. It was an idealistic vision, probably impossible. Species had been fighting each other since the beginning of recorded history. But then most species hadn't figured out how to turn entire star systems into weapons. I'll deliver your message to the Empire, Kethvar said finally. Thank you. And Admiral, when you make your report, please be accurate about what you saw here. Your Empire's decision should be based on facts, not pride or wishful thinking. Kethvar nodded. His report would be the most important document in Zephyrian history. It would determine whether his people chose wisdom or destruction. The communication ended, leaving Kethvar alone with his thoughts. Outside his window, the stars looked the same as always. But he knew that everything had changed. The galaxy now contained a species that could defend itself absolutely and project force across any distance. 2 weeks later, the Zephyrian fleet reached the edge of human space. The olive branch turned back toward Earth, leaving them to continue alone toward the Empire. As they jumped to faster-than-light travel, Kethvar took one last look at Earth's star. It looked so ordinary, just another yellow star among billions, but now it was the center of a new kind of power. Not the power to conquer, but the power to make conquest impossible. Months later, Kethvar stood before the Imperial Council, delivering his report. He told them everything. The hidden installations, the impossible weapons, the technology that could reach across interstellar distances instantly, the choice that humanity was offering. The Council's initial reaction was predictable. Outrage. Demands for massive retaliation. Calls to mobilize the entire Imperial fleet and crush these upstart humans before they could become a greater threat. But as Kethvar's detailed analysis sank in, the anger changed to concern. Then to fear, and finally to the beginning of wisdom. The Zephyrian Empire chose option 1. Earth's system was declared off-limits. Expansion continued in other directions, but with new caution. Other species throughout the galaxy began receiving strange reports about humans who could defend themselves. Absolutely, some civilizations sent diplomatic missions to Earth. Others simply avoided human space entirely. A few tried to develop similar defensive technologies, though none succeeded. And on Earth, Admiral Chen stood in the command center of Luna Base, looking out at the stars. Her aide approached with the latest intelligence reports. Admiral, we're receiving first contact requests from 17 different species. The Zephyrian encounter has apparently attracted attention across the galaxy. Chen nodded. Schedule diplomatic meetings. But keep our defensive systems at full readiness. We've shown the galaxy that we can defend ourselves. Now we need to show them that we can be trusted with that power. Outside the observation window, Earth turned slowly in space. Its blue oceans and green continents looked peaceful and natural. Only a few people knew that underneath that familiar surface lay weapons that could reshape the balance of power across the galaxy.